Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Currents, a podcast that navigates the ever-evolving landscape of cloud computing and its impact on modern business. I'm your host, Matt Pacheco, and I lead the content marketing team at TierPoint, a managed cloud and data center provider. Today, we're thrilled to have Richard Tallman, Senior Director of Global Cloud Security and MSP at Bitdefender. Thanks for joining us today, Richard.
Oh man, thanks so much, Matt, for having me on and having Bitdefender on, right? So thank you, I appreciate it.
It's awesome. We appreciate it. So you bring over 2 decades of experience to the tech industry, and you've witnessed and participated in the transformation of on-prem infrastructure to cloud-based solutions. At Bitdefender, you lead the global strategies for cloud security managed services, leveraging edge AI and machine learning tech to stay ahead of cyber threats. Really cool. So today I'd love to talk to you on this episode about the challenging face of cybersecurity in the cloud era, possibly discuss challenges of compliance in a global context, get your insights on emerging trends, strategies, and fighting against cyber threats, and then jump into Bitdefender's unique approaches, including the elite Draco team and the commitment to innovation. Draco team.
They're so amazing.
And their commitment to innovation and AI-driven security solutions. So I'd love to talk about all of that with you today. So thank you for being on.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much. Where would you like to start?
Yeah, so we'll jump right in. Can you walk us through your career journey from building your first computer to leading a global security team?
You know, I finished college out in Southern California, athlete, and personal computing started coming up. So in my head, I had this thing and I worked for a circuit board manufacturer, first job out of college. We were making printed circuit boards, right? And I'm like, I'm going to build my own. So I went down to Micro Center. I don't even think they're in business anymore. Kind of like before Best Buy was even around. Maybe.
Oh, they're around.
Are they still around? Okay. Greatest place ever, right? If you're a tech nerd, greatest place ever. You can buy whatever you want, right? So it's bought every piece and component I thought I needed, went home and kind of built it and looked at it and said, okay, now what? And then I called a buddy of mine who was at the time at a company called Autobytel.com. It was like kind of just that .com era was just starting, right? My wife worked there too. Sam, what do I do now? We got to load the software on it. I was like, oh. So he helped me load software on it, turned it on, 96, right? So, and then from there, kind of went to a company, First American Title, and we were in the escrow, title, flood, insurance game. But we started to build our own internal cloud, even though it wasn't called cloud at the time. We had our own on-prem servers. And I remember seeing this thing in the middle of the room, like, what the heck is this beast with all these blue lights, loud, hot. But we started to scan. We were very early adopters in that. So I left circuit board, went into this. We were very early adopters and basically keeping everything, keep it all, right? Because if the county is going to record something on file, we need to keep it too, to make sure there's accuracy there, because we're the ones ultimately ensuring the product for our customers, our banks, our lenders, et cetera, and the customer, right? So we wanted to keep it ourselves. And that kind of progressed over time from in our office in Irvine, having stuff literally like a mini data center right next to escrow team and the title team, to, hey, let's put this in a site, right? So then we built a site, then we built multiple sites, and then you co-load, and then you replicate the data, and it just evolved, right? To the point where it progressed, went to a partner, and that partner basically then sold, right? I kind of went out of that world into a partner and said, hey, I'm going to take knowledge base that I have, and I'm going to work in kind of the Unix space. And we're going to work with folks to just supply the materials and tools, et cetera, that they need. Had a lot of big customers, really fun time, early 2000s in the world. But then eventually said, hey, I want to go to the manufacturer. So then in the why did I want to go? Because the Unix game, and back in the day, Veritas, Unix, it was massive, right? Buy your giant system. AS400 was huge. But x86 platforms came out, and this little thing called VMware came out, and it just literally revolutionized everything. Like, instead of one server for one application, it became one server for 10 or 20, or how much memory and CPU you could get into this one little machine, so then I said, well, shoot, this is going to change the game. So then I went to Dell, and we basically worked with small, medium businesses and the data centers and selling them and providing them with the machine power, right, and the storage capacity to basically kind of create their own clouds, right, so that you didn't have to have it on-prem anymore. Kind of progressed to there. And then there was one day, Tim, and I know he's out there. I'm going to send this recording to him when he's done. I think it was 2012. I was with Tim at a baseball game. He was like, well, I'm not going to renew my contract with you guys and my $2.8 million hardware deal. I'm just going to go to Amazon. I was like, what? What are you talking about? So he literally shifted his entire platform. He's like early adopter. Not on a lot of times they weren't putting primary applications up into Amazon. A lot of people were just test dev. He's like, nope, I'm sending primary. It works. I've tested it. It's fine. So that was another big break. Like, oh, I got to get, x86 cloud. Boom. I got to get out of this. So took a little progression, started doing more cloud work in a sense. And then I noticed, right? So everybody I talked to was a city government, state government, educational systems, big businesses. It was like, buy the hardware. And then like 17th on the list was security. And then backup was even after that. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, well, shouldn't that be the priority in this case? So that was like 2015, 2016. I kind of noticed that. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because to get into the building, you've got to go through the tank traps, right? Going to the data center. I mean, you're a data center, tank traps. You go into the building and you've already got 20,000 cameras on you and they know who you are. Interesting story about that from a data center up in Vegas. And once we got past the 20-foot walls, the man greeted us with his, camos on. And, it's very interesting. Takes us inside. And then you go through the check, give him the ID. And we're literally on the tour of this data center for a customer of ours. It was a colo site up there, real big one. And he literally stops the lady that I had. Excuse me, ma'am. He just reached into her purse without asking and pulled out a thing of water, like a bottle of water. I was like, ooh, they saw that out in the parking lot. They went back and watched the tape and they took it because they didn't want her to run up to some computer like a crazy person, pouring it on the server. So, but you just saw that progression from I built my own computer to then reselling computer and building something, reselling computers for people, helping them to build environments, to then going into the manufacturing space. And then just seeing the weakness and identifying, hey, there's a need for security out there. And I think it's going to be a bigger bet that people are kind of neglecting. And then you kind of started to see those breaches. The breaches were really happening at the big locations, right? The small, medium business, they were, if it was happening, they didn't know, no clue. So it's for the primary reason, like, hey, I'm going to get into this business. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to help customers to bring them the best solutions possible at a cost correct price, that they can have the enterprise grade solutions that the giant Fortune 50 has, right? To protect their deal. So that kind of led me to Bitdefender. So I was at Symantec for a bit, went to Bitdefender. I've been here 6 years and it's fantastic. I mean, Bitdefender's been around since 2001 officially. And the history of Bitdefender is amazing. Like if we had time, I'd love to share that with you. But that's kind of my journey. My career was really long-winded and I apologize, audience, but everybody's got a story to tell. Awesome. And I've been doing it for more than 2 decades, so.
That's exciting and exactly what we want to talk about. Can you actually give us a little bit about Bitdefender before we start asking you questions about it?
I'd love to. I would actually love to. So it's interesting. So Florian Talpish, our CEO and founder, co-founder, he was doing this in the early 90s, like mid 90s, like helping big corporations, right? Post-Soviet era in Bucharest, Romania. That's where our company's founded. Helping big companies as a contractor to create antivirus to protect the known, right? Let's say the known things. And it's fabulous to hear him tell the story because he basically said, hey, look, if it was me or anybody, we all knew what the known was. That's a given, right? So, hey, this is the known, that I know what that is. I wanted to develop stuff with my teams to find the unknown, right? And that's really put him on his quest from the mid 90s up into 2001, creating Bitdefender, which then led him into the world of machine learning. I think we have over close to 450 patents total, not just machine learning, which then became AI. And it's just an amazing thing to see the story and the progression from being a consultant in the industry, genius mathematician, to kind of building Bitdefender and just organically growing and meeting needs for people. And most importantly, meeting the needs of the people that might, like I said, like the small medium business that needs a cost correct solution. That's his heart ultimately. And if you don't believe me, like I think there was an attack a couple months ago in the healthcare industry in England. He basically donated the MDR services for anybody that needed it. And MDR is like our SOC team, right? Our SOC analysts, we have 3 locations worldwide. I can go into that later with you. But it's just said, hey, if you need it, we'll help, right? There was another incident that took place a couple years ago, and he basically said, hey, Bitdefender is free for you guys in this one particular country over in Europe. You guys need it, take it, right? Because we want to help you guys. Which then leads to things like just the heart and the willingness to help. Basically, the tagline we have now, and it's amazing, it's 2 words: trusted always. That's it. Trusted always. And it really is at the heart of the foundation and the footprint of our company. It comes from the top down. Trusted always. So
it's very exciting, and we're glad to have you on here and hear a little bit about Bitdefender. You can feel the passion for wanting to help your customers.
Absolutely,
and it's really cool. Love to hear it. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of cloud security a little bit. So at Tier Point, we recently ran a modernization survey, and we put out a report. And something really interesting we found. When it comes to modernization priorities, we surveyed about 400 IT decision makers. We found that 53% of them at the top of their IT modernization plans were cybersecurity. That surprising, over cloud adoption, over data management, cybersecurity was at the top of their list of priorities. And we know the landscape has been changing in cybersecurity, and that's probably why so many are prioritizing it. From your perspective, how has the landscape of cloud security changed over the recent years, and what are some of the most significant challenges organizations face today when it comes to security?
Man, it's interesting you say that, and I love the research and the data you guys bring back, because it's like going back to my story. Let's say 2012, 13, 14. It would have been 17th on the list, right? I got to buy data. I got to buy hardware. I got to buy storage, fast storage. And now it's like, no, I need to protect my data, my intellectual property, to stay in business. So that's very interesting. I'm surprised it's not higher than 53%. It should be like 99.99%. The biggest initiatives that have kind of pushed us in this direction, going back to maybe the virtualization solution and the ability to then spin up multiple things, multiple places, consolidate and centralize it. First starts the cloud industry, right? Then the fast lines, the fast cabling, boom, it allows us. And then the antennas, and then this little devil right here, the tablets, the ability to log in anywhere, anytime. I mean, how many times have you gone somewhere and it's like, oh, just put your username and password in now, right? It's so easy, and each of us probably has 100 of those at this point. It's like, oh my gosh, the ability to not have to sit at one device or even sit, like you can walk around and work on your phone anywhere you want, right? Any country, anywhere you want. That has evolved to the point where it's like, okay, where the heck is my person? Where are my people? What are they looking at? Who's looking at them, more importantly? And more importantly, how do we secure all that data, right? If they're going to log in on 14 different devices, we need to ensure that my data as a company is secure. And that's, I think, where the evolution is. And that's probably why these people are at 53%, more than half, are saying security is a big deal. Especially, let's say, law firms, bank, anywhere. That's a lot of critical data, right? That can't be shared. And yet it still gets shared on accident, right? And, public Wi-Fi. Let's just join this. People have access to your stuff, once you join this. Free Wi-Fi, free. I think that's probably the biggest thing, is the multiple devices, the ability to host things from a centralized site or multiple sites. The giant, I think that's probably the biggest thing, just easy access. I mean, what we used to say, it's like anytime, anywhere. We used to say that back in data center, anytime, anywhere. Just get it. It's there for you.
So this could be a fun one. Can you discuss the parallels of the adoption of cloud computing and trends in cybersecurity solutions?
Yeah. So the parallels, right? So you still have this anytime, anywhere mentality with any device. And now you probably want to add that as the third. Anytime, anywhere, any device. But okay, so how do we get those parallels? How do we then protect this data? I think the best way to do it is to have a history of things, right? To know the known and the unknown, right? You need to have that ability, right? To do both, in a sense. What can we see that's there? And how can we pivot, and how can we pivot quickly to the things that we recognize that we don't know, to go and correct those things very quickly. So the way that we've mirrored that solution with our product here, our Bitdefender MSP and our sales groups here, and then our engineering and our product and our development and our labs. I mean, there's a bunch of different layers to the solution, is we offer those continued layers to the customer, but we do it through our cloud-based platforms where we have multiple data centers in the United States, multiple data centers in throughout Europe, using multiple different providers, right? So we have compliance components, right? You have to have this data secured in region, and there's certain standards that you have to comply to adhere to the SOC 2, et cetera. You just have to these days, because people are wanting to trust us with their data in a sense. And we don't really ever see the data, but we protect people from getting to the data and then acquiring the data or pilfering that data out. So the ability to basically mirror the industry, this is where I'm getting to this, to mirror where the industry's gone, right? The industry has gone to cloud first, application first, right? It's all an application. It's just an application, username and ID. Just get into this for your CRM, for your sales records, for your engineering tools, for your art, for your marketing, for, just keep going down the list. How do we mirror that? So we mirror that and combat that. In a sense, we live in that world too, right? So we also live in the cloud world. So if something goes through our cloud data lake in Accenture, here, Asia, overseas, in Europe, then we can quickly scan that data before it even goes to that whatever device, anytime, anywhere, So in a sense, we can spin that back in a sense. So that's kind of, you have to mirror the enemy. And if you think of like your enemy in a sense, they're coming at you with 20 horses. How do you mirror that? What are you going to do? And then behind that layer, what are you going to do for the next move in a sense? So you have to it's amazing to see our Draco unit and our labs team think about those ways, because they're very proactive and not just dealing with a reactionary component. They're thinking years ahead of things. So that's kind of very interesting to see. But ultimately, you have to mirror the solution that's being offered to people, and you need to fit into that solution very seamlessly and simply, so it doesn't detract from what they're trying to do. They're trying to use these applications. You can't be the primary focus when somebody's sitting in an Excel spreadsheet. It can't be your blinky light going off. They just have to use the Excel spreadsheet. They don't even want to see you, in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, now that you mentioned it, can you tell us a little bit more about the Draco team and its role in your cybersecurity efforts?
They're in a mysterious organization. I would say they're kind of like our elite Delta Force in a sense. They are the best of the best when it comes to helping. Interpol, Europol, FBI, DOJ, government agencies, et cetera. Something happens, and that team, which there's a couple names that we know, right? If you search the internet, because they're the leaders of the organization, a lot of them you don't know who they are, because it's just that they need to be anonymous in a sense, right? So they can go and do their jobs. They basically will hunt things down in particular and find things that then will protect either that country, military organization, or even big business in a sense. And they are amazing at what they do. They were just featured on a National Geographic documentary. It was Trafficked. And they're actually featured in there, I think, in our HQ office. And some of the leaders of the Draco unit are in that episode. And it's just fascinating to see how and what and why they're doing it.
Wow.
But yeah, kind of cool that Bitdefender took part in an episode of National Geographic and won an Emmy, for our efforts,
Wow. I'll have to look that episode up and watch it. Sounds really interesting.
It's pretty intense. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's why it's intense? Because you put yourself in the shoes of the person that's being held at ransomware. It's scary. We have an interesting story about that, where we were actually at a conference. I had just gotten off stage talking to 3,500 people, came down, and a partner came up to me because I mentioned something about our decryptors, right? So that team of the Draco unit works directly with we have layers, right? Like I said, so you have to have those layers, 50 horses, but we have all these other layers. And our labs team is just amazing, heavily involved in education, a lot of teachers, mathematicians throughout Europe, et cetera. These folks are amazing. Dragos is one of our leads. He's just amazing. Like, the guy's genius. I think he got one of his PhDs in he wrote his own operating system. Right? Like, pretty amazing. So, but like, got off stage and I mentioned, hey, if you need help, right? If you ever need help, we write these decryptors. Our labs team offers these decryptors up free of charge. Just go search. You can go search on the tool on Bitdefender, ransomware decryption tools. I think we've offered 32 or 33, I think, up for free. 2 partners came up to us right away. Hey, we're being attacked right now. I grabbed one of my lead solutions architects and said, hey, can you help real quick? What's the name of the ransomware? They searched it up, and no joke, you saw this relief, like this burden on top of them was just like carrying 1,000-pound weights. Like, oh my gosh, I see the light. I can see it. So they use the tool, clean it up, blah, blah, blah. But those are kind of the things that Bitdefender is willing to do, right? So we have all this knowledge base. Let's give it away, right? Let's give these decryption tools away. Fantastic things, like through our labs team, just the genius. And they're the ones that are not only looking at the known, but there's the ones looking for the unknown too, because they've taken that same mindset that Florian Talpish has created. So great, known's fantastic. Let's go find the unknown. And then when we find the unknown, let's fix it so it doesn't happen to somebody else again. And let's be able to offer that back to the community, right? The global community.
Really interesting. And you mentioned the kind of 50 horses of the enemy matching that force. I'm sure you're using tools like AI, machine learning. Can you talk a little bit of how those technologies have transformed your approach to threat detection and response?
Yeah. And just to be blunt, you have to at this point, right? Because let's say the other side is doing it and they're doing it to create things. It's just the component of automation and how fast things are being thrown out these days. I mean, you probably use chat. It's I use it but here's the downside about chat. I use chat we homeschool our kiddos, and my son was in chemistry class last year, and we use chat to correct or just to check this one chemistry problem. 2 seconds gives you the answer, the solution formula, and then he's like, "It's not right." It's like, "What do you mean it's not right?" Just assuming you're trusting this thing that just did all this work for you. He's like, "It's not right." Okay, hey, you sure this is right? Oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I always call it her, and I don't know why I call it her. She was wrong, and that happened to us like 6 times, at nighttime. We're just checking chem stuff. If people are willing to take things like that and to use a tool, third-party tool, it's not yours, you don't own it, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and maybe write code with it, right? Or you're going to use it to create things, it's going to come back with little errors, right? It's not right. So our ability to take those same tool sets, implement them inside and test them and validate them, it basically is helping us and our company create that automation, like to meet it head on in a sense, because you need to do it from an offensive component and a defensive component, because they're coming at you with I don't know, honestly, Matt, the amount of things we stop every day is like, I heard a statistic one. It's the amount of stars in the galaxy. That's the amount of data points that we're monitoring every single day and protecting. Like, it's just, there's a number I used to be able to give. We can't give it anymore. But it's staggering. And that's the interesting thing, is people out there still don't know who Bitdefender is. It's shocking to me, So it's, I would say the automation, you'll see more from us. Can't give too many details. You'll see more from us in regards to AI. And again, but that's like Martin Zugic and his team and Dragos and the Draco unit, the labs team. They're creating things, not necessarily just for next month. They're creating things for years out, right? Somebody told me, I think I was talking about quantum computing. Be ready for it. It's coming.
Oh yeah.
So what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
The news report on it. I think 60 Minutes did something on it a few months ago. It's been promising.
Such an interesting world to follow that from back in the day when they started talking about quantum. You got a 0, a 1, and now a 3 or a 2. Like, what do you mean? It's not black and white anymore. So, but yeah, we have amazing teams. Our engineering team, Claudio, Soren, they're just very proactive. I can honestly say it's the first company I've worked for that actually listens. And that's why we have things like our MSP global councils, here, Europe, over in Asia, where we'll bring people in, MSPs, MSSPs, we'll bring them in. What are you seeing? What's going on? What do you need? and we actually generally listen. And then we bring them back a year later and we show them what we did to hopefully meet those demands and meet those needs. Very interesting. I've worked at places where you didn't even get to talk to engineering. You didn't know who they were. You didn't know who these product people were. Here we're working hand in hand with them. We're setting up these events, these calls, and they will deep dive into meeting people firsthand because they generally care. They want to help. They have the tool sets and the skill sets to help, and they want to share that with the world.
So you talked a little bit about AI and your specific example of the chatbot giving you something that could be incorrect, and validating it. You said your child validated that, and so human interaction is still really important when it comes to AI. How do you balance that at Bitdefender, the use of AI with human expertise?
The checks and balances need to be in place, right? You have to have those checks and balances. I come from I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a product of the X-Files, trust no one, trust but verify. It's just, you have to have those steps and those things in place to trust but verify always, right? So it's, because if we're going to go run around with this trusted always mantra, we better be watching our own stuff. And then if something did happen, how do we fix it? Because no one's perfect in this world, just so we're clear. You can't point me in any direction of anybody out there. Oh, we do it, blah, blah. That's great. What happens when it hits the fan, right? Are you going to run, or are you going to roll your sleeves up and get in and help? And that's the difference between, I literally think that's the difference. We show up. There's been several, early morning calls that I've been on where, hey, we're under attack. I think one attack we stopped. We helped over 600 partners that were basically locked up with ransomware. None of our data was, right. So it was other third-party data. Everything that had Bitdefender on it was fine. Not that we're perfect, but then what we did is we came back and we said, okay, let's put our labs team together. Let's figure out what the issue is. Let's write the decryption tool for it and let's free it up. And I think it was like $1 billion that we helped free up. Just ridiculous. That's a lot of commas, man. I can't even fathom that. Less than our national debt, but a lot. Yeah.
So you got the human expertise to interact with the AI. On the other end, there's
Matt, you have to, right? You have to, because it's a machine. You have to control it. You can't just turn the lights on in a data center, say, go for it. No, you have to run the power. You have to ensure the cooling's there. You have to make sure, whenever that amber light's on, better hit the road, go figure out what's going on. You can't let certain people in. You have to be able to take that water bottle out, right? If you saw something. So you can't, it's still a machine. You still have to control it, right? It's not a free for all yet.
So humans could also be a vulnerability. How do you go about educating your staff and making sure your team, because I bet in a lot of these instances where your third-party partners got ransomware, it was a break in the chain somewhere. Someone clicked an email, someone downloaded a PDF and did the wrong thing. How do you ensure security within your own organization?
Our security org, so we have another org inside. It's a security org that just focuses on Bitdefender. And they will constantly send out phishing email. First of all, it seems like mostly it's human error, right? That's causing this. But again, if you balance that up against her, she's not accurate either, right? So you throw a chem problem at her and she'll come back with an error. But if you let that error persistently run its course, you're gonna not end up in Vegas. You're gonna end up in Bullhead City, right? So it's a matter of wait a second, where am I? So it's a matter of finding that and managing it in a sense. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah. And I think you talked about you have an internal security team too, those phishing emails. That's a good test.
I won't even share that sample. So they're sending them out all the time, and they're really good. I mean, they will. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we find out, hey, did you see that? Everybody's telling each other, don't touch it. So the humans are working together. It's almost like we're on the island of, the Lost Boys. Yeah, don't touch it. So
you build a culture around it.
Yeah.
It's kind of
it seems like, and I can't remember the statistics. It's been a while since I've read those, but it seems like social engineering is the component. That it's just the industry in the world needs more, right? Think about think about the world we're in now, and I'll divert real quick. Think about senior citizens, right? And the world we've given them. It's scary, man. Like, you've got to have a phone, you've got to have an app, you've got to log in, you have to trust this. You're just giving this trust away so you can get on Facebook or whatever. And I don't mean to I'm not bashing Facebook anyway, but it's just an example, right? And it's like, how many things then are taken from that? And then you've got the scammers behind the scenes trying to fish or grab. And I mean, it's kind of sickening in a sense, right? That people are being taken advantage of in that sense. But we've given them the world without an education. We've given them the power of a space shuttle in their hands. They can access anything, anytime, anywhere. But with what education? And that's the part. We don't offer that educational component. We really just stick to we're going to help protect. But there's really good companies out there that will and that do. And I think that that's something that we could offer more of, right? And to be blunt, you shouldn't have to pay for that. I mean, every kid in school has a tablet or a PC or something, So it's it's not stopping anytime soon, So the educational component and how to secure yourself, don't join this Wi-Fi, don't trust, trust but verify. It seems like the world has become just trust, and there's no verify anymore. It's like just trust,
Yeah. Get a VPN. I trust that VPN too.
Yeah. Greatest example, right? So greatest example, you have a house. Do you lock it at night?
Absolutely.
Do you have a Ring doorbell on your?
Yep.
So, right. So there's two layers right there. You lock your door and you have a Ring.
Security system.
So if they came in, do you have motion detectors? Right. It's like those layers are built in to protect your family. People need to think with that same mindset of their data. This is my data. I own this data. I'm just not going to accept and click all and join some free airport Wi-Fi that might not even be an airport Wi-Fi. It could be just some dude or whatever sitting next to you.
Change the name of his phone.
Yeah.
Or his device. Yeah.
We used to do that actually when I was with my buddy Mike. We would go in and we would set up like a dummy Wi-Fi and people would join it. And then we'd be in front. I remember one time we were in front of like 400 people doing a demo. I would say like, so who's this? And we'd pull it up and we'd show their like Wells Fargo, you're Wells Fargo. And then we would show their username and password, but we'd blank it out. And this one guy was furious. Take it off my phone now. It's like, hey, you joined the Wi-Fi, but yeah, no problem. So it was an example of how vulnerable we are and how almost too trusting we are in a sense, right? As human nature, you want to trust, but in a sense, you have to verify too. You can't trust everything that's out there today.
Very true. So let's talk a little bit about compliance, especially when it comes to multiple regions. Bitdefender is global. How do you get across or get by some of those big compliance challenges when operating outside the US and multiple countries?
You start with a big legal team first. So our legal team is phenomenal. And I don't know how they do it sometimes. Like you have to deal with, I think we operate in 170 plus countries, So you have to work. It starts with legal, right? Because you have to protect yourselves, you have to protect the customer. And then from there, then you have to set up the infrastructure and how we're going to deliver this data. Man, how do you? And then you have to adhere to the standards that are set by that region or that country, right? So let's say you're in Europe and you're GDPR, and now you're diving down into the individual country, right? Germany or France or Spain or Italy or what's their specific. So you have to adhere to those standards and work from the top down. So you not only meet, but you would exceed some of those standards. It is a constant game. I will say it is a constant chessboard that's moving. And there's new talk here, even in the States, right? Where they're saying, well, we're going to go state by state in a sense. That's what you're hearing on the street, where you're going to have to, basically some states are more strict than others and they want to adhere to. It seems like California sets the standard for that. Like look on every package that's out there, according to California. I was like, when did California get to put their name on every package of food that's out there? Why isn't it Washington? Why isn't it Idaho? But it starts with those lawyers and you just have to make sure, but ultimately it's the best interest of that customer. They're doing it for a reason and adhering to those. So what are we employing and what do we deploy? You start with working backwards to meet those demands and exceed those demands. And our infrastructure team is amazing, right? They're everywhere. We are multiple sites, multiple places, multiple countries, multiple regions, crossing the pond, across the Pacific, et cetera. But then on top of that, so how do we then take that data and give it back to the customer so they don't have to worry about the compliance component, right? So we're focused and fixated on the endpoints in particular. So how can we apply? We just rolled out our CSPM Plus, our Cloud Security Posture Management tool. It's phenomenal, right? So if I were to ask you, Matt, and let's say you're running your company, how do you know where all of your people are, or not necessarily people, but all those devices? Where are they, and what are they logging into, right? How do you even know? Where do you start? What map is it? A whiteboard on your, or can we just basically ping all these devices and we can show you? Let me show you where they are. And then on top of that, let me show you the vulnerabilities that are in place at this particular moment. But then let me show you not only vulnerabilities, but how do you correct those, right? So giving you those proactive remedies inside of our Gravity Zone security platform. This is the problem. Here's the path. Here's the potential solution, right? So that's kind of the path we're doing for the end user base and the MSP and the MSSP base to allow them to, again, you don't want to make it a full-time, oh my gosh, this thing's, all I see all day is Bitdefender. You want to hide behind the scenes and you want to help make things, just know, again, you want to trust the solution, you want it verified, and you want to be able to work and do the rest of your things. So you can log into the other 17 apps that are out there, that you have to work on every day.
Yeah. And then also in certain regions, and probably in the US eventually, there's going to be compliance around AI too. That's starting to
I hope so.
Yeah.
She's not always right. I'll just say
no, she is not. I think it's from her, right? From Scarlett Johansson from the robot.
Or Dave. Well, I guess we could go back even further to Dave, right? 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
Dave, him. Scary movie. Anyway.
Oh yeah. So another big trend that we saw in our report and outside of our report, it's just something that's everywhere, is this skills gap, these skills that you need for cybersecurity talent everywhere. Everyone's struggling with finding the right talent to do what they need to do for their security programs. What strategies has Bitdefender employed to attract and retain top tier cybersecurity talent?
It is only going to get, I'll tell you this, right? Let me meet that question first. It's only going to get bigger because data is not getting any smaller. And I think you know that, being inside the data center. It seems like we're saving everything, right? And then we kind of neglect it and forget about it, but it's still there and you still got to protect it. So it's only going to get bigger. The gap's only going to get bigger. I think you're seeing universities now. We do a lot of teaching in Europe. We have a lot of professors that are teaching cyber firsthand. We work here. So our security operations center, we started this about 7 years ago. We founded our headquarters for SOC in San Antonio, Texas, for a very specific reason. It is basically military USA, right? You have multiple bases. Cyber Warfare Command is there, Air Force, a lot of other agencies are there. So when they're maybe done with their government security analyst position, hey, you can come to Bitdefender, right? Come work at Bitdefender and be a security analyst for us. So we have a facility there in downtown. But that doesn't mean that we rely wholeheartedly on that facility. We have 3 facilities. We have one in Security Operations Center with best of breed. I think I asked Tyler and Josh, what's the average, just out of curiosity, because Tyler was still Air Force Reserves, right? He's been there 18 years. On a call with him once, it was kind of funny. He's in his gear. I'm like, dude, you on base? He's like, yeah. So he's helping with the call and he's on base and in his gear. And, I asked him, like, just give me, he's like, oh yeah, our average real world operational deployment experience is about 8.5 years per person of a security analyst, right? So we have layers in the SOC as well, right? So you have your SAM, your security, your security application manager. That's your person, right? There's a person there you're going to communicate with. Our security analysts are then up there. They're the ones fighting the fight. They're the ones, if something's happening, they're fighting the fight. They can pull in. Yes, we have a building, but that doesn't mean that everybody's in the building. They can remotely dial in from that heads-up display on their giant wall. Boom, somebody else is on. And they're all engaged in this particular battle. And the same can be said for our Bucharest location or our Singapore location. You can just keep people popping up, and now you have multiple security analysts fighting that same particular fight. And then you have, again, multiple layers, right? Now we have our labs team. Our labs team is going to engage, and they're going to deep dive into what's really going on so they can prevent that solution and that fix to the particular issue that's taken place. So it's an interesting world. The ultimate goal is you got to prevent, detect, respond, and report, because if you don't provide that report back to somebody, they're not going to know what to fix, right? Like, it's like, hey, we prevented it. crickets. Like, what was it? What was it? What do I do? Where did they get in from? What's going on? So prevent, detect, respond, and report. They did a study on MITRE ATT&CK, MITRE ATT&CK. So they did a study on MDR services. And again, we've been doing it for about 6 years, maybe 7. Our particular offering in the MSP community, we've rolled out about almost 3 years. It took us a while to build it because when you're in the MSP layer and the MSSP layer, you don't often talk to the end user, right? I'm talking through a distributor or an RMM tool. They in turn have a partner, an MSP or an MSSP, a partner who then in turn has so it's a B2B to B2C world. They're working with the end user. So I don't really talk to that end user more often. So how do we build that tool? So if one particular end user is set up to utilize our SOC services because they don't have the hands, right? How do we roll back up the chain so if an incident takes place, how can that SOC analyst, security analyst in Singapore or Bucharest or San Antonio, how can they engage and know exactly who, what, when, where, why, and how right away, right? So to know. So from that MITRE ATT&CK report, we actually ended up number 1, which was like, whoa. And we were against some big dogs, man. I ain't kidding. Like we've been around a long time, but we were against some big dogs in that fight. And we ended up number 1. Which was really cool and pretty exciting. And again, I will say this, we're not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but we're willing to roll up the sleeves and get in the fight with you.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a very robust security strategy and talent strategy and how to use your different teams. What's some advice you can give to listeners, organizations that are looking to effectively bridge their skills gaps in their security teams?
I think just letting them know that they're not alone, right? That there are companies out there, be it Bitdefender or somebody else, there's somebody out there that they can rely upon to use their security expertise, right? To use their analyst, somebody that's been in the cyber warfare command for 18 years, right? And then those people, because first of all, they're not cheap. You can't go out and get your own. You could, but at what it costs. Maybe you're a 6-person shop. And you want to protect that business is all you have. You put everything into that business. Well, what happens if you got breached, right? So it's like their data is no less important than somebody who has 50,000 employees, right? To that particular person. So you have to take the individual one by one and treat them as such. Like you are important, right? So just to know that you're not alone, to reach out to folks that do have that level of expertise. And just to ensure, like, hey, man, like if something happens, what's the plan? How can we prevent, detect, respond, and report? And hopefully, honestly, Matt, nothing ever happens. Hopefully. But if it does, right, you got to plan for the worst case scenario, right? I often use, and people hate it, our HQ when I say, okay, Rich is on a plane and I die. How are you going to access my data? And they always say, that's pretty morbid. I'm like, yeah, I'm just worst case scenario. Right? Like, how do we use the worst case scenario? So taking a 6-man shop to a 50,000 person shop, worst case scenario, what's going to happen? Is our data safe? How can we report that data? And then more importantly, how can we remediate that and then go back and then fix it? So it's not there anymore, right? It's the known and the unknown. So we can make the unknown known and then move forward.
That's great advice. Wow. Yeah. Okay. My favorite part of the episode, looking forward in the future, trends. Question for you. What emerging trends in cybersecurity are you most excited about?
I think you've already touched on it. I think compliance is a component that I'm very excited about, and being able to offer that back to individual, the 6-man shop or the 50,000 person shop. Like there's people out there that today will do it, but how do we get it to the individual unit? How do we get it to the actual, like, hey, is this tablet compliant with NIST, PCI, whatever, right? Whatever it is you need to be. So I think compliance is a big deal. It's just in the lawyers will bring that to us whether we want it or not. So be ready, right? So how do we meet that demand? But it is kind of an exciting thing that you can validate, trust, and move on, right? To me, AI is interesting. It's scary, but it's interesting because she's not always right. So use my example. Quantum computing, I think it's priced out of the world for most today, but so was Unix back in the day, right? So was VMware back in the day, right? So at some point there will be a compression and a consolidation onto that once it's released. It's out there now, but it seems like it's universities and large businesses today. But once they figure out a way to commoditize that solution and bring it out to the masses, it's coming. So that's an interesting world to me, right? What's going to happen over the next 5 years? But I think primarily is the compliance standpoint.
How do you see the role of managed security services providers evolving in the next few years?
They will have to adapt and move on, right? Like you gotta move with the times. They're going to probably get bigger, just like there's back in my day, last century, you could go. I remember we used to go to a lawnmower shop, and that lawnmower shop sold bicycles, right? And then Lowe's popped up and Home Depot, and then the lawnmower shop went away, right? There was kind of a consolidation of things, which was a bummer because then that expert who could fix the lawnmower disappeared. There's no more expert in a sense. So I think you're going to see a consolidation of that world as well, right? To go from mini stores to giant Costco. Well, now the people are just stocking shelves and there's no expert in a sense. I think you'll see the same thing happen in this world where there's going to be a mass consolidation of things. And the experts are still there, but how do you access those experts, right? How do I find the person that can fix my lawnmower or secure my, data center? They're there. They're just being consolidated under the companies like Bitdefender, et cetera. So it's just a matter of finding the expert, giving access to those experts in an easy, simplified way so that we can help.
Very interesting. Last couple of questions before we wrap up. I feel like we could go on forever, but yeah. But if you can impart one key piece of wisdom to cybersecurity professionals listening, what would it be?
I think trust but verify, right? It's like, and definitely engage in some type of social manipulation experiment, right? To make sure, because it's again, like you touched on it earlier, Matt, that's the number one thing, right? How are they going to get in? Someone's going to hold the door open, right? Even if it's not secure, they're just going to hold, I'll hold the other. It's one of the elevators where it's going to the 50th floor and you have to badge and somebody jumps on at the last second. Like, wait a second, who are you? So some of those things, right? Deploy, train, you just trust but verify, I think is the bigger thing I would recommend.
It's a reoccurring theme and I love it. It's great. Simple, straight to the point, but effective. Last question for you. What's next for Bitdefender in terms of innovation and growth in cloud security?
I think for my specific group, it's really not necessarily pushing is the wrong word, not offering just an agent that does a bunch of stuff. It's offering the services layered on top of the agent, right? Offering the managed detection and response group, right? How do I give people that access to the person that can fix the lawnmower? I'll use that as an analogy. But it's my security analyst, right? My security analyst here in Texas. I'm not in Texas, but here, meaning the United States, in Singapore and Bucharest. How can I take that layer of defense of a person and an expert and a team of experts to put on top of those 50 horses, right behind the thing? Behind that is then a prevention technique is the offensive services, right? We acquired a great company out of Singapore called Harangi, which means tiger in Korean. They offer offensive services, right? Pen testing, right? How do you know if you don't know? So maybe look to that conclusion. I think you'll see a lot of that too, and those price points to get tested come down in the world. For a long time, there was few experts that could offer it, and they could charge whatever they want. I think you're going to see not necessarily commoditization of that, but more offerings and the availability to utilize something like that. I think we'll see that on our group in Bitdefender, where it's not just our software, but it's the services behind the software, be it a prevention and detection solution or an offensive solution, right? We're going to take the fight to them and figure out, and then here's your report, and then we'll fix it. And then behind the scenes, our defensive folks will be able to monitor, prevent, detect, respond, and then report.
Awesome. Seems like a very bright future for Bitdefender, and it's great hearing about it. And we really appreciate you being on the episode and speaking with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Matt, and I appreciate your company for doing it and getting the ability just to to showcase, because like I said, not a lot of people even know who Bitdefender is still, so we're more than just antivirus, which we tend to win, I think 12 or 13 years in a row. I don't know. It's something like we win every year, antivirus. Well, yeah, that's the first step. That's the first layer. That's the lock on the door, but then the Ring camera and the motion alarm, we've got all this other stuff behind the scenes, to the watchdog even, so from our Draco unit to our labs team, to our engineering groups, lawyers, we all have one purpose, right? We want to become trusted always to our customers out there.
Well, we appreciate it and appreciate the conversation. This was a lot of fun. And I'm sure if we have you on in the future again, we'll have a lot more trends to talk about because this world is constantly changing.
Who'd be better to have on is Martin Zugic. He's one of our solutions forward thinker architect. Dude, you'd want to talk to Martin. He's phenomenal. I can make that happen.
We'll get him on the list. We appreciate it. So thank you for joining us today. And for our listeners, we appreciate you listening in. For more episodes of Cloud Currents, check us on anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube. If you're interested in the report I referenced earlier, you can find that at tierpoint.com, and I will link it in the description of this episode. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Richard, and have a great day.